What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in true crime. And tonight, a new best guest. Excited to introduce her momentarily. Convicted killer and disgraced lawyer Alex Murdaugh. Well, we all know by now that he wants a new trial over the murders of his wife and younger son. He was filing court papers. Someone's phone is ringing.
Yeah.
I love it. The start of all good, Jonna. Alex Murdaugh is obviously a convicted killer now, a disbarred attorney, and now he wants a new murder trial. And he just filed papers that accused the clerk of court in Colleton County, South Carolina, of tampering with a jury who found him guilty. But the state says, not so fast, as a SLED investigation shows inconsistencies with what the defense just presented. And they're now sort of famous, whichever way you want to look at it, the press conference that they held on the steps of the appellate court. Best guess, you know his face well. He is now being sponsored by Under Armour. That is how big he has gotten. Eric Bland joins us. He is representing 4 of the Murdoch jurors. We'll get to whatever he's able to tell us about that. He was also selected for inclusion in the South Carolina Super Lawyers back in 2015, 2016, and 2017 for excellence and recognition as a super lawyer in professional liability. He also
through 2023. Through 2023.
Through 2023. There we go. There, I wouldn't expect anything else. He also is representing Gloria Satterfields' family. It's involved with Stephen Smith as well. So long tentacles into the Murdoch saga. The new best guess, Jonna Spilbor, like Donna, she said, with a J. She is a popular and outspoken attorney, a columnist, a legal analyst, appearing regularly on my old home, Fox News Channel, the Fox Business Network, and other television networks. She is the resident legal expert, taking questions and having fun, more importantly, every Thursday morning on the #1 morning radio show in New York's Hudson Valley, WPDH 101.5. She also co-hosts the award-winning radio show Happy Hour with Jonna and Carol, 2 cool names. And then Amy Lawrence Lovely coming to us from her home studio tonight, from an undisclosed location, which is her home. She fights for the civil rights of the wrongfully accused every day in her practice at the lovely law firm. She was on MTV's Teen Mom 2 and has appeared on the Dr. Phil show. Before we get cracking here, I've got 3 attorneys, so I'm going to do this once again. We've been covering, and Eric Bland is from Philadelphia. I'm going to put up a picture here, a little disturbing, but it's nothing that attorneys haven't seen, and I think you guys are aware of it, but I want to continue to bring light, and here's the photo. We've been covering this story. This is a case of Ellen Greenberg. She was a school teacher. She was found dead in 2011 in a tony little suburb of Philly called Manayunk. Well, her death is extremely suspicious. She had a fiance at the time. A lot of evidence pointing in directions of a very suspicious death. This was originally ruled a homicide. Then there was a meeting of the minds and politicians, and the death was ruled undetermined, only to about 3 months later eventually be ruled a suicide. And I'm asking everyone, look at this photo.
Impossible.
To us. Yeah, there you go. You heard the attorney, Eric Bland, say it's impossible.
Insane, right?
Yeah, insane. This is a photo that an independent coroner put together for an autopsy representing the injuries to Ellen Greenberg, who died in 2011. Well, the reason I'm bringing this up is the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania just denied the Greenbergs a chance to even get this case investigated. It has never been investigated. There are connections in this fiance's family that run all the way up the food chain to the governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I've tweeted about it a lot over the last bunch of days, including some of the connections. And as you can see on the bottom right now, you can text the governor. Just on Friday, he announced he has a new cell phone where you can text him. Well, I'd love everyone. The number is 717-788-8990. If you are not watching this again, just listening, the number is 717-788-8990. Please reach out in a very diplomatic manner and ask the governor to please use the resources and power of his office to do the right thing. The Chester County DA is now allegedly investigating this after this case has been kicked all over the map. But another blow to Josh and Sandy Greenberg. We've had him on the show. This is just one of the biggest travesty of justices that I've seen, and I want to continue to shed light on it. That is Ellen Greenberg on the left, and a photo of the wounds and injuries she had when she died under suspicious circumstances. One of the injuries to her heart was 4 inches deep. Tough to do that. And by the way, 2 of the wounds came post-mortem, according to an independent autopsy, which means she stabbed herself twice after she was already dead. So I'd love to,
So can I ask
people,
a question about
100%. Go ahead, Amy.
Has this family ever considered filing a civil suit?
There's a suit going on now.
That would
but
give
it's
them
not
subpoena power?
That is what they're working on, but they're continuing to hit roadblocks. It's been suggested that they file a wrongful death lawsuit against the family, but they have not gotten to that point yet. But if any attorneys want to step in, you guys are a lot smarter than me with some suggestions. Happy to connect you with Josh and Sandy Greenberg, who are looking for answers. Keep in mind, this is 2011. This is 12 years this has been going on. They've spent more than $500,000 of their own money to investigate this case, and the state and the city, Philadelphia, has never, ever investigated this, and it just reeks. So,
Joel, can I ask a question too? Was there
yes.
was there a suspect? Was there a lover, a boyfriend, a
She was
fiance.
Yeah, she was living with a fiance. A lot of suspicion pointed in his direction. A lot of evidence that substantiates. There's so much to it.
That's the size of the knife, Joel?
Roughly, yeah. In terms of,
it's impossible to be able to get that behind the head and have the entry wound be straight.
Yeah, it's
what we like to call some bullshit, Eric. That's what we like to call it.
That's right.
In South Carolina.
Amy.
So
I love Amy.
Yeah, I know you. This is not your guys' area of expertise, but Eric, I know you're very connected to Philly, and if anyone wants to help, we're working on getting some billboards up. The district attorney, a guy named Larry Krasner, is running for re-election, and he's not going to be happy if he gets voted out. So the people of the Commonwealth and the city of Philadelphia have the power.
This should be whoever's running against them, their platform.
100%.
I will investigate the murder of Ellen Greenberg. Everybody can vote for that.
100%.
Joel, how come that's in Chester County? Because Manayunk is borders on Philadelphia and Montgomery County. Everyone's
kind of recused themselves. I could go into more and more details. It was initially ruled a homicide, but even though it was ruled a homicide, they let a professional cleanup crew come in, and they let the fiance's uncle, who's a well-known judge, come and pick up computers, laptops, cell phones. Everything was cleared out the night of the murder.
Now I get it.
Yeah.
Sounds like when Alex went to the hospital after the boat crash.
Sounds like some low country shit.
Yeah, a lot of stinkiness. So want to get to Murdoch, but I want to keep this on top of everyone's mind. So if the greater minds here,
woman.
Eric Bland, Jonna, Amy,
woman.
She was a very pretty young woman, too
kid,
young, 27. Yeah. If you have any ideas, please reach out to me. I can connect you with the family. I will now take this down and move it along. Eric Bland, I thought you were in the clear for a little bit. You're going to get a little break from Alex Murdaugh, but you're kind of thrown right back in the fire. Now you're representing 4 of the jurors. How's everything going on your end? What can you tell us?
It's gone well. They've met with SLED. SLED is investigating the allegations, which are very serious. I'm not going to minimize the allegations that are raised by the defense. For the system to work, it's got to work for the worst of us. So the rest of us, it works for us. So, Alex deserves to have a fair trial, and these allegations are serious and they need to be looked into. But everything needs to be measured. And without revealing the attorney-client privilege, I'm highly confident that when it comes time for my jurors to go under oath, they've already given statements, but when they go under oath, if they do, I'm confident that they're going to say that their verdict was free from any duress. It was a just verdict in their minds, and it was a product of their own free will, and that they believe in that verdict when they made it, and they believe in it today.
But are they going to say that what Miss Hill, what they're claiming she did, happened, and despite that, they feel like it was their own free will and without duress?
I can't tell you what they're going to say, but I'm going to tell you, Amy, that that it wouldn't surprise me if all four that I represent disagree with what they've alleged that Miss Hill said or did. I'm pretty confident of that. Now, I don't know what the other five are going to say, or the other five. Yeah, six. I don't know what the other six are going to say, but at least my four, I'm highly confident that they're going to disagree with the allegations and felt that Miss Hill conducted herself properly, was very accommodating to all of the jurors, and never crossed the line.
Eric, are you representing the two that the defense team came forward and said there was two initially who got angry because she wrote the book and they came forward and gave statements? Are those among your clients, or are you representing four unrelated to those original two?
Four unrelated to those original two. Joe McCullough is representing those, and he's close with the defense. He's very close friends with Dick Harpootlian.
And Eric, did they specifically seek you out, these four jurors, just because they know you from the trial and seen you on the TV? Is that what happened?
A little of both. I was a little disgusted when Harpootlian in his press conference said that all the jurors need to lawyer up. I felt that was a very threatening thing for him to say. These jurors gave 6 weeks of their life to this case for $15 a day, and for a lawyer to just tell every lawyer you need to lawyer up really offended me. And so I sent out a tweet that said, look, if anybody needs some advice or they want representation, my partner and I will give it to you, and do it free of charge. And the phone started ringing.
So it's all pro bono work.
Yeah. I just feel like it's it's one thing for the Harpootlian to have filed the motion and do his investigation. He's certainly entitled to do that, but to threaten jurors, I've never heard of jurors being threatened to say you need to go get a lawyer. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Jonna, to you, this is a big picture question, but I think it's interesting and sort of timely with everything going on. What responsibility, this is from Shelley Raposa, by the way, I always say best guest, better community. We've got a really smart audience. What responsibility to the greater good does the defense have when they know a client is guilty? The implication here is obviously with Alex Murdaugh, but Jonna, you want to take that?
Sure, because that happens all the time. That's a really common question, and usually it's posed in a more simplified way, like, how do you defend a guilty person? And look, a lot of clients are guilty, but our job isn't to judge the client. Our job is to make sure that if they are guilty, that the investigation, that their rights are protected, the investigation was conducted properly, because whether you are accused of murder or you're accused of jaywalking, there are rules and procedures and guidelines and protections that protect all of us. And if we don't protect those who are guilty, then the ones who are innocent are also going to get caught up and have their rights violated. And that's another overly simple way to explain why we do what we do. And it doesn't matter so much the client's actual guilt or innocence. It matters whether their constitutional rights are protected.
But Johnny, there's a limitation on that. You can't put that person on the stand if you know that person is going to lie, or you elicit a lie from them with your questioning. So there is a limitation on what a lawyer can do when they know that their client is guilty.
Well, no, you're absolutely right. Unless the client wants to get up on the stand and admit the truth, but you can't suborn perjury. You can't concoct a story. So if your client's going to lie, then he or she has to sit next to you and shut up, because that's the way it is. We can't put our ethics on the line for that. And as lawyers, we're protected against doing that.
Amy Lawrence, coming back to you, but Yala, I agree with Eric Bland. How dare Harpootlian say get a lawyer to the jurors with his shades on at that? at that, adding to the insult there. And she goes on, EB, give us a teaser of what the jurors are going to say. Can you do that? You've got attorney-client privilege, so I don't know if you're able to.
I think under oath, and I'm not going to tell you what they're going to say, but I'm confident it's going to disagree with the allegations raised by Harpootlian in his motion and with the two jurors who gave affidavits, one being known as the egg juror who was discharged, and then another juror who actually rendered a verdict. I'm confident that they're going to disagree, and they're going to state again, I believe, that Miss Hill conducted herself in accordance with the judge's direction and what she's supposed to do as a clerk of court.
Eric, are you giving a little hint into the future? Are they, if there's a hearing, and I'm going to bet that there will be a hearing, your
Right.
client will be testifying in that regard?
Yes. I mean, we're going to obviously, I don't want my
They all
clients.
have to.
Yeah, I'm going to try to get that sealed. I don't want them to be, subject to the world. I think that needs to be a closed hearing. And they need to be able to feel like that they're not going to be threatened. They've already been threatened by Harpootlian, and I just don't want them outed.
I think that's the worst thing. I don't want your clients to, I don't think their face should be shown or their name, but I don't think it should be behind closed doors, because that's exactly the problem in this county to begin with. Everything's done behind closed doors.
No, I agree with you, Amy. Yeah, no, I'm perfectly fine with them speaking. I just don't want their identity.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Because one of the things that, because I've been involved in 2 cases where there's been some kind of jury issue after the trial and motions made, and it wasn't a long period. There wasn't an investigation by a police department. The judge brought everybody in and put them on the stand and asked them questions under oath. And he got to the bottom of it very quickly. And so I wish that had happened, because then we'd have some finality to it, and we'd know the answer. And when I hear Harpootlian say lawyer up, it's so like everything there's not a
Ounce of decency in his body.
That's the word, in his body. Like, he can't just say, like, I really advise, because I mean, as attorneys, we say that all the time. You might want to look at getting a lawyer. I don't know what these jurors have to say, but if there's something there, you might want to go seek counsel. I say that every day to people, but the way they said it, and I thought they came off as like dickheads, for lack of a better word. Let's just say it. They came off a bunch of assholes.
Johnny, you don't know Amy. She's got spice, man. She's got spice.
John is a New Yorker, so it ain't gonna phase her. But
the problem is with that press conferences is they came in with their little tiny sunglasses on, and they were too cool for school. We were going to see this. I mean, it was a bomb for me, because anytime we have anything having to do with a juror tampering, that's. And when you bring those kind of accusations, you better bring it, and you better bring it hard with all the facts and evidence behind it. And instead of, I thought that Mr. Barber, the attorney that works with them, because he's not lost his credibility with the public and the court, should have been the one to do it. But this is ego talking, right? That's ego up there on the screen. That's not lawyering. That's ego. And he probably should have been the one that got up and said it, because when they got up there and said it, they started dancing around really the facts. And when they started getting asked the hard questions, like, well, I believe there might say this, and they wouldn't. Somebody should have got there and said,
if you go for the king, you better kill the king, number one. Number two,
and they didn't.
It seems that Griffin had wind that possibly this was going on during the trial. And there's a significant argument that he may have waived the right of Alex to complain, because if he knew that this was going on, it should have been brought to the judge's attention. That's been written about in the brief reply by the Attorney General so far. And then the Attorney General put a little teaser out there to say that when they file their full brief, after Dick corrects the fact that they didn't file it correctly with an affidavit from Alex Murdaugh himself, that there's going to be inconsistencies in connection with what Harpootlian is alleging.
And that is
that's the hearing.
Go ahead, John. Real quick, that was a big disclaimer that the state basically issued when they released their statement, saying that they better not find out that either Jim Griffin or Dick Harpootlian had known about these allegations during the trial. And if so, that is very problematic. Real quick, NJ Coolchick is saying justice for Ellen Greenberg. Someone said Houdini couldn't have done it. Just sickening. Justice for Ellen. So we're going to keep working on that, everybody. Please tweet, email, do whatever you can to Governor Josh Shapiro. And don't reelect District Attorney Larry Krasner. He's part of the problem. Do it in a political way, but let him know you're displeased. Real quick, John, I'm going to let you jump in. But so the state basically came out and said, look, we've got issues, doubts about these jury tampering allegations. We're going to kind of work backward and get to those allegations a little later on. But they basically said an ongoing investigation that's being conducted by SLED found significant issues with the claims. Jana, I'll stop there and let you pick up with what your thought was.
So my initial thought was, why can't you make the argument? Well, first of all, we don't want to turn the defense team into witnesses at this hearing, number one. Number two, Eric, why don't you make the argument that your clients shouldn't be compelled to testify at all? And the reason I say that is because the trial is over, right? The judge doesn't have really his hand on their shoulder anymore. The central players in this are the two jurors that initially came forward and said something is wrong, something was untoward, Becky Hill did something wrong. That's all the judge needs to hear from in order to make a determination to whether or not to overturn this.
The problem is that we need sunlight, as Amy said. In this case, it's very important. The sunlight is
corroborated by anyone.
And the fact is, what would you do, Jana? I'm going to make you Judge Newman, Judge Jana, if two people on the jury say there was interference. They haven't necessarily said, by the way, that it influenced their verdict and it switched them, but they're clear that she interfered and overstepped the line. What would you do if 10 people come in, 10 of the jurors say, no, none of it happened, none of it influenced us, and she didn't do anything wrong? So then you got 10-2. I think in that circumstance, the judge can't do anything but leave the verdict alone, because I think we don't want a system where jurors render a verdict, then they're individually polled. They say it's a true and just verdict of their own free will, no duress or coercion. And then 3 or 4 months later, either they're getting second thoughts or the community is laying hard on them with wood and telling them that they did something wrong. I'm really scared about jurors changing their mind. So what do you do? What are you going to do if it's a 10-2 vote, Judge John? Tell me right now, real quick.
Here's the problem that I see. If you have two people who are going to come forward in order to do nothing, in order to leave this verdict alone, then Judge Newman is going to have to say those two jurors are lying through their teeth. That's the only way that he can leave this verdict alone, because if they're not lying through their teeth, then it doesn't matter that 10 other people said, well, it didn't bother me. That's not going to be the issue. The issue is going to be, if it happened, it shouldn't have happened, and Alex Murdaugh's going to be entitled to a new trial.
But what if the other 10 said it didn't happen? What if 10 say it didn't?
Then 10 of the people of the jury are either telling the truth or lying. The other 2 are either telling the truth or lying. If you're a defendant and that happens to you, you're going to want a new trial. And I think the Constitution is going to dictate that you get one under these circumstances. It's not like they came out for no reason. There's a book. We can't deny that Becky Hill, the clerk of the court, wrote a goddamn book, right? We can't deny that. So whether it was influenced by a dislike for Alex Murdaugh, whether it was influenced by a chance at fame or fortune, doesn't matter. For two people, unless they're lying through their teeth, to come forward, it not only does it necessitate a hearing, I think it necessitates a new trial. And I don't like Alex Murdaugh. I don't like him, but I think he's entitled to a new trial.
Okay, I want to read this excerpt real quick, guys. I'm going to read this excerpt.
Go for it. And by the way, the book is Behind the Doors of Justice. You're seeing it on the screen right now. The Murdoch Murders. We had Neil Gordon, the co-author on, and Becky Hill, who's a controversial figure. She's the elected clerk of court in Colleton County. She has not really commented other than to say she can't. Innocent.
She can't, Joel.
Well, she's
in jeopardy.
But she talked very briefly to a newspaper, basically saying that I'm not guilty. But go ahead, Amy.
I've only read a couple chapters of this. I got it yesterday afternoon. It'll be a quick read. I just didn't have time because I've been in court. But page 2, it bothered me at page 2. Although I was conflicted about knowing the Murdoch family and about having so many people watching and listening to me as I read the verdict, I was mostly concerned about Alex being found innocent when I knew in my heart he was guilty. I had this fear that the goodwill the Murdaughs had built up in the community would influence the jury. For more than a century, the Murdoch family had built their name throughout the Low Country. Their legacy of controlling the justice system as solicitors, attorneys, and prominent wealthy family had come with alleged misuse of power, yet there was a lot of love and loyalty. When I hear that she's concerned about the verdict and what it should be, that's a problem, y'all. And the thing is what these jurors are alleging happened. She wanted a quick verdict, said things like it should come back quickly, these kind of stuff, and it did. And the thing is, y'all, I don't like, look, I think he did it. 100%. I'm with you, Eric. He's the biggest piece of shit that ever walked the face of the earth.
But what I'm saying is she didn't say it has to be a quick verdict. She didn't say it has to be a quick verdict. I think you're going to hear the testimony is. She said y'all can deliberate to 10 o'clock tonight. 10 o'clock.
And then
you can deliberate to 10 o'clock tonight. And if you, please let me finish. You can deliberate till 10 o'clock tonight. And if you don't reach a verdict, you will have to stay in a hotel. And I've already made arrangements for you to go to the Microtel Hotel. So that's what I think you're going to hear from 10 of those jurors.
Eric,
Not that you said you have to reach a verdict by 10 o'clock. You can deliberate. If you don't reach a verdict by 10, you have to stop and we'll put you up in a hotel.
Eric, what about the smoke? What about this? What about the smoking cigarettes? What about the smoking cigarettes? Allegedly, for those who don't know, the clerk of court, Becky Hill, would not let them take smoke breaks. 6 of the jurors were basically nicotine addicts, big smokers, and she wouldn't let them do that. What about that, Eric?
Nobody complained that they had to get a cigarette. She said, I would prefer, I believe she said, I prefer that you continue deliberations. But look, there's not a constitutional right to smoke, but I get it. People are going to say it's like denying food or denying a bathroom break. I'm not going to get inside a smoker's head because I don't smoke. So I don't know the pull of a cigarette, but nobody actually voiced to say, I have to get a cigarette. They asked. And she said, I would prefer you not to. I think in New York, you're not allowed to.
I think
right?
we have
Jana,
to.
I think in
New York, you're not allowed to smoke?
I think once deliberations start, unless there's going to be a break, you can't go get a cigarette. That's what someone said, I think, on Joel's show the last time I was on.
But you can get breaks during deliberation.
Yeah.
And Jana, what about this? The jurors were polled. They're always polled. I mean, do you recall a case that you've covered, either had as an attorney or covered from a media standpoint, where you kind of see a complete breakdown of what was supposed to happen in the system after the fact? Have you seen something like this?
Oh, after the fact? No, I think this is the biggest example of something like that. Yeah, no, this is the absolute biggest example, but I'm not surprised, you guys. I'm not surprised that this is happening, because now that we have the system that we have with cameras in the courtroom and everybody can be famous in a minute and anybody can write a book, I think jurors try to get on these kind of trials so they can make money afterwards. And that bothers the hell out of me too, but we can't do anything about it. That's the age we live in. Everything is automatic. Everything is at your fingertips. You can do that sort of thing, but not the clerk of the court. And preferably not the judge either, because it's just the appearance of impropriety in making money from your duties as a judge, a clerk is beyond. And here we are. This is the first time. I can't think of another case where something like this happened. Maybe you two other lawyers can, but I can't.
Never a clerk of court. Usually it's a prosecutorial misconduct where the prosecutors seat somebody on a jury that they know or something like that, or one of the attorneys, but never a court officer. Sometimes there's been allegations against bailiffs, but never a clerk of court. Amy, you got to go.
I had a bailiff. I tried a 2-week murder trial, the Innocence Project that I did. Worked for 5 years of my life on it. We got a not guilty. And after the jurors love to call me after a case, or they'll wait for me after a trial. It's very sweet. They want to talk about it. And I met a juror for coffee, and because he just had so many questions still, like why did they prosecute this case? There was no, there was no evidence, this kind of stuff. Like, your guess is as good as mine. I've been arguing that for years. But when I met with him, he told us about a bailiff, a deputy in our system that told the jury that they thought he was guilty as hell. And nobody asked.
Crazy.
John, how about this from JQ? The lawyers approaching the jurors, meaning Poot and Griff, going out to their homes. Isn't that also a form of jury tampering? And then I want Eric Bland to be able to respond to a comment. But John, what about them approaching jurors?
So it's not jury tampering when they're no longer a jury, number one. Number two, they don't have to talk to anybody. They can if they want to, they don't have to. So if you knock on the door and the juror wants to start flapping his or her gums, that's great. And if they don't and shut the door in your face, you walk away. So no, that's not jury tampering, in the short answer.
Guy Vermectin, Eric hates Alex so much he's willing to say screw his rights. I got to say right off the top, the first thing Eric said was Alex Murdaugh deserves a retrial. If this is in fact true, that's the first thing he said. Eric, would you like to respond to Guy Vermectin?
No, I would like to respond. I absolutely agree that if she overstepped the line and interfered with the jury's deliberations, or she gave direction. Remember, she's a coordinator and a facilitator. Directions come from Judge Newman and Judge Newman only. Now, she could transmit a message from Judge Newman, but she can't on her own start directing the jury. If that happened, then that would be tampering. The question then becomes, though, the case law seems to say that with that tampering, the jury has to come forward and say it influenced their verdict and they would have voted differently. I do dislike Alex Murdaugh, but I like the Constitution a lot more than I dislike Alex Murdaugh. So I don't want the Constitution to be harmed. I want a fair trial and a fair jury for everybody that comes within our system, the same way that Gianna said it in the beginning. She said it perfectly. So I disagree with you, Governor Mecton.
And Eric, real quick, have you spoken at all to either Jim Griffin or Dick Harpootlian? I mean, it's a small state. Have you bumped into them? Have you had words? Have you talked to them?
Well, I saw him last Thursday at the sentencing hearing of Corey Fleming, where I argued for Corey's sentence. And before that, they had the scheduling of Alex Murdaugh's trial for my clients, the Satterfields, is going to be on November 27th of this year. But no, there's so much bad blood between us. I do communicate privately with Jim Griffin. We don't have that much animus for each other at all. But I don't talk at all with Harpootlian anymore. It's just too toxic.
There you go. You're hearing that on STS. Ski Hat Sarah with the ski hat back on. It was off for a while. Question for Eric and the panel. What are your thoughts on the fact that Becky Hill wrote a book at all? Eric, since they're asking, you want to grab that one and then we'll move it on to
disappointed. Think she should have waited. She should have waited until the appeal was done. All court officers should have waited until they're done. The jury, they could do whatever they want. Witnesses can do what they want. But I think a court officer, an elected official, even Judge Newman, I think they should have waited knowing that there was an appeal filed. And certainly Harpootlian's going to make hay of the fact that Judge Newman went on the Today Show and gave an interview. I just wish Miss Becky would have waited a little bit longer. It's just not a good look.
Yeah, Amy Lawrence, I mean, at the very least, the optics are not good. The trial just ended basically, and the book's out there. They're on the Today Show. She's allegedly taking jurors. I mean, just the optics alone are not very good, right, Amy?
There's a total ick factor to the whole thing. Yep. If she had left office and then wrote this book, we would all feel totally different about it. But that's obvious. I feel pretty certain she was writing this book in the midst of it as it was going on. I mean, she had every intention of writing this book, and there's just an ick factor to it. It doesn't feel right.
There's a big
whether legally it was okay or not, it just doesn't feel right. And usually when it doesn't feel right, it ain't, right?
And how would we feel if she wrote a book that said, I think he's innocent? I think they convicted an innocent guy. But how would we feel if she wrote that book? What would Harpootlian do if she wrote that book? I mean, it's so untoward. It's just unethical to do it at all at any point, even after the appeal, because that would still raise issues of what happened during the trial. It's just not a good book.
Yeah.
Well, let me just say this real quickly, that the defense themselves were filming their nightly trial work and released it in the documentary that was on Fox Nation 2 weeks ago when Buster spoke. So everybody had their finger on making money off this. The defense had filming work product strategy. Can you imagine that, Jonna? They were discussing who they were going to put on. The second thing is Jim Griffin himself has a podcast now. So everybody, including me, I'm not excluding me, everybody has a finger in getting notoriety and getting money on this case. And that's the problem when you have a case like this. It became so big, so explosive that everybody was trying to cash in.
Eric, what I was going to come to you with is so SLED has basically said that, well, the state, I should say, has come out and said that the police investigation has found significant issues with the claims. The South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, which is SLED, has opened this inquiry into the matter over the objections of Murdoch's attorneys who question the agency's impartiality. And by the way, none of the SLED investigators looking at this aspect were involved in investigating the crime at all. But what I'm curious about, Eric, since you're close to the ground on all this, when they say significant issues with claims, do we have any idea what these significant issues are, Eric?
Yeah, one is I'm not sure Harpootlian is going to be able to participate in this investigation. It's a law enforcement investigation. It's jury tampering is a crime. So this has to be done by the state. That's why the Attorney General controls it and directs SLED to do the investigation. SLED is not going to defer to the FBI. That's one thing. The second thing, in answer to your question, is the significant discrepancies are, I believe you're going to hear from my jurors as well as other jurors that Becky Hill did not do this and that they were not influenced by their verdict, that they sat through 26 days of trial, listened to over 100 witnesses, took in over 700 pieces of evidence, and made up their minds based on what came from the witness stand, not what was said by anybody. And I think you're going to hear some things possibly about this egg juror, about conduct that may have taken place during the trial itself that disturbed some of the jurors.
By the way, for those who are just kind of new to this, she's referred to as the so-called egg juror because when she was dismissed, Judge Newman asked her if she needed to take anything out of the jury room, and she said she had a dozen eggs, and now she has been dubbed the egg lady juror. So that's how quick things happen in this world. MB says, I think so much of what Becky Hill writes in her book is an afterthought and exaggeration because she wants to be important. But Jonna Spilbor, regardless of the book, what's at issue here is the process, right? And again, even Eric said, even though this guy is a convicted killer and a lot of people just openly do not like Alex Murdaugh, and I think that's the vast majority of us, people who are, into the law and followers of this sort of thing believe that the process needs to be pure. Isn't that the bigger argument?
Absolutely. That is the argument. And that is why lawyers can get up here and defend somebody who everybody probably thinks is guilty. The jury thought, most of the jury thought he was guilty. He's an unlikable guy because set aside for a minute. Even if you think there's some scintilla, some hint of evidence that he did not do this, remember, he got on the stand and admitted to doing some horrible, disgusting, unethical things. Those 100 financial crimes, what he did to the Satterfield family, violating all of his clients, the most sacred right. You don't touch Iola money. He's a horrible dude in that respect, even if he didn't kill his wife and his son. And that's, obviously there's an excellent chance that he did that too. But even still, despite that, we can't say, well, the rules don't apply to him because he's such a disgusting human being. No. The rules have to apply to him because if they don't apply to him, then they don't apply to you, to me, and everybody else who's listening to this.
Beautiful. Well said, young lady.
We have to love the system and want to protect its integrity in the Constitution more than we hate him.
Yes.
Great.
And that's what's hard for people to swallow.
Exactly.
Well
Shout out to Tracy Fuller. So happy to be alive with Best Guest. Happy to have you here. Amy Lawrence Lovely. Murdoch attorney Jim Griffin said that jurors had rebuffed the defense team's questions for months, which is kind of interesting because months would imply going all the way back potentially to the trial. But anyway, they wouldn't talk until the book was released. And his theory was that her take on the trial led some on the jury to cooperate. But what about this? And the cooperating jury's attorney is Joe McCullough, as Eric stated. But Jim Griffin said that it's kind of interesting because he said that they were basically rebuffing the defense team until the book came out. Then they were unhappy with the book. Do you buy that?
This is what I think, y'all. I think that when the judge asked, have you had any undue influence, or, you know, those questions that they're asking, I think they're thinking of my neighbor, my husband. That's who they're thinking of would unduly influence me when he asked those questions. Has anybody talked to you about the case? Because she's part of the court process. She's right there beside the judge every day. She's the one that's like has this intimate knowledge of them. And is protecting their anonymity and all these things. They're not thinking that the things that she says to them is wrong. And so I have a feeling that there's an ick factor when they read this book, and there's a piece, it dawned on them that what she did wasn't okay.
I think the egg juror has always been cooperating with.
Oh no, I think 100%. And this is the deal.
I think the new juror who gave an affidavit may have flipped by the book, but I think the egg juror has always been mad that she was discharged from the jury. Yeah, I agree.
She's pissed because she gave up all those weeks of her life, and at the very end, when it counted, she got booted. So she's pissed. I agree with that. I don't think Dick and Jim really. They may have heard a whisper of it, but I don't think they would have known because they were doing everything they could to halt the trial. So-and-so has COVID, right? I mean, they were trying everything they could to kind of like not have to do this because they weren't prepared. I think that was kind of obvious. And I think that if they thought that there was something they could bring up in the middle of the trial, they would have done it. I think they would have came in with a fucking marching band and a blowhorn and would have announced it to everyone, because I don't think they wanted to try this case, and I don't think they wanted to try it for that.
Oh no, they made a motion for a speedy trial. They did. They wanted it tried quickly because they didn't think the state was going to be ready. They didn't think the state was going to be ready, and the state called their bluff.
When they said, "Okay, let's do it," they were like,
"Yeah, they choked."
They got called on their bluff, and they didn't have enough to choke. You know,
Jonna, there's a comment and a question here from Suzanne Silver. You have no idea what Dick and Jim said to the jurors when they knocked at their door. They might have said that they might be in trouble unless they talked. I wouldn't put it past them. If you want to address that, followed by this. Why would two jurors make statements they could be punished for if they were not true? They gain nothing from it. Jonna?
So that second point is a great point. The first point is entirely speculation. And I'm going to bet that longtime attorneys who've been doing this for 30, 40, 50 years are not going to risk their ticket to practice law by lying to jurors after the fact in order to make a motion for a new trial. That doesn't fly to me. That's just not plausible. But as to the second part,
unless they send an investigator first, John, I absolutely 100% agree with you. Lawyers would never do that, but investigators have a way of doing things that saying things that lawyers don't do. So I want to know, did Dick make the first contact, or did investigators?
Dick Harpoon did knock on one door.
No, and it had to have been an investigator, because we don't want to also become our own witnesses. We don't want that. Why we send the investigators.
But Dick said they did it. Dick said it was Jim and him that were driving down dirt roads. They remember in his Mercedes. I wonder
if he had no pops or whatever it's called.
At their press conference, they never said it was investigators at the press conference. They said it was them, that Eric just said that they were driving down the road.
Johnny, you and I would have never done that. Amy, you and I would have never driven to a juror's house like that. We'd have an investigator first.
Absolutely.
They're so fancy. They have an investigator go out there. That's exactly what you do. You send an investigator out to make sure that the integrity of the system happened. And
you don't want to be a witness. John is 100% right.
Yeah, you don't want to be your own witness. They don't want to be called to testify at this hearing that they're absolutely.
One juror said it beyond the egg lady, and then that gave them the opening to get into the other ones. Listen, they told us, as they're like telling them to fuck off, right? And not answering their door, leave us alone. I don't care about Alex Murdaugh, who sucks. Hey, we know this is how exactly it would go down. Hey, hey, we know one of the jurors has already told us what the clerk of court said, and then that made him hesitate. And if you don't tell the truth, right? This is what they're saying. I know it. And if you don't tell the truth, you'll be held accountable too. And then all of a sudden a door opens and then somebody starts saying something. That's how they got in that door. But trust me, Dick Arpillion didn't knock on any doors on a dirt road.
Send a hate mail to Amy Lawrence at hatemail.com when you complain to me about the cursing. To John Spilber, if Becky did what has been alleged, do you think she should be charged criminally? She does have an attorney. Justin Bamberg is well known, and apparently a fine attorney. But what do you say, Jonna?
So here's the thing that scares me, just as a lawyer. When this hearing happens, and I'm confident that it's going to happen, now we have the two original jurors who are going to come forward. If they're lying and they perjure themselves, they're putting themselves in jeopardy. We've got Eric's 4 clients, right? If they lie and perjure themselves, I have no idea what they're going to say, then they're putting themselves in jeopardy. Who's going to decide whether they're lying? The trier of fact at this hearing, not me, not you. A separate person is going to make that determination. So and then what? And then SLED takes them away in handcuffs from the hearing. Like this is such a legal quagmire. It's not funny.
Very good point.
That's why I would, if I were you, Eric, I'd want my clients to be seen and not heard. I don't know if that's going to be an option. So this is really scary from a legal perspective. Everybody is on this slippery slope. Of course, everyone should tell the truth. Always be telling the truth. But who's going to make the determination? Because Eric's clients can't be telling the truth if the two original jurors who are going to come forward are also telling the truth.
I don't know. I think they can. I think they can have two different experiences and two different things. I think that can happen.
Listen, you and I, we all can be in a car together. We can drive down the street and we see something happen in a parking lot. And 4 months later, Joel has us on the show. The three of us are going to give a pretty different recollection of what happened. We'll be close. We'll be within the ballpark. But some of the real granular details, John, we're going to be different on. We could differ on them. That's
true. That's very well true. But we also haven't written a book about our road trip. If we wrote a book about our road trip and then we're like, oh, I saw this and I saw that, somebody is going to be interpreted as not telling the truth. There's a book involved here, you guys. This isn't just somebody who decided to come forward and go, you know what? I don't really like what happened. I don't like it. It's not what happened. We have words on paper now from the clerk of the court. That's the issue.
Amy Lawrence from AGIG. Amy, question for you. If a second trial excluded financial crimes and focused mostly on the June 7th events, timing, his hose, turning the hose off, driving the golf cart, etc., what do you think the outcome of a second trial would be? And care to guess? Someone else, by the way, said that they should give him a second trial, but put death penalty on the table. But what about a second trial? Amy, there's always a chance that he could get away with
they're getting
an
a
acquittal,
second bite of the apple, right? They're getting a second bite of the apple after conviction, so you know what to do and what to do. Although I'm not sure they do anything different because that requires self-reflection, right? And I'm not sure that they can give that. I just don't. I mean, we know them. And I always said if I had, I would never, but if I had to defend Alex Murdaugh, every time they brought a financial crime witness up, I would say, thank you so much for your testimony, Mr. Bland. Now, do you have any evidence about a murder of Maggie and Paul? Do you have any evidence of their murder? And you would say no. And I'd say, thank you. I didn't think so. And then I would make a mockery of this whole financial crime. And then when the gunman, the very fancy gun expert gets up, you say, lay out every fucking gun that they put in evidence. And you say, hey, Mr. Expert Gunman, could you tell me which one is the murder weapon? And
well, let me be a prosecutor for 1 second. I'm going to be a prosecutor for you 1 second. I'm going to leave out the financial crimes. And I'm going to tell you that the kennel video and not telling your son, hold on, not telling your son for 2 years that you saw his mother and son the very last seconds before they were allegedly killed, that supposedly a cartel or some hitman came to your house without any guns with the intention that they were going to break into your house, thinking that you do have guns and take your guns to kill your son and your mother. And then 10:05, when you come back at the house and you see your wife and your son laying there, that you're not going to go grab them and try to squeeze them and say, oh my God, what
I'll be
happened? What
covered
happened?
in guts.
To have blood on you. You're going to be totally clean. And then you're going to wait 42 minutes to call your son. You're going to call your son's friends first. You're going to do a text stream. You're going to do a Google search. You're going to call your brother. And then 42 minutes later, you're going to get your only living child on the phone. And you know what you're going to tell him? Come home. Instead of saying, go to the police right now. There's a killer on the loose. Do not come home. So I'm going to tell you, I can get a conviction without the financial crimes.
Oh, I think they can definitely get it. This is the deal. What's the kennel video and the data from the Suburban is what totally fucks him, right? And then you add on that. I mean, I always make a joke. He was the best lawyer in the room. The show that he put on, it was like jazz hands. Like, I've never seen anything like it. Oh, Mr. Waters, I am so sorry. I am a lie. I'm a cheater. I'm a stealer. But I did not kill my family. But when he got up there and Creighton Waters asked him, then, okay, if you didn't do it, then who did it? And he said he genuinely thought it was because of the boat case. He answered the question truthfully. He genuinely killed them because of the boat case. Yeah, because any other father, right, who didn't do it would have got up there and said, it's my risk. I did it. I may have not killed him. I didn't, but I bought a lot of drugs in my lifetime. I have shit a lot of people.
Johnny, do you have a significant, Johnny, do you have a significant other in your life?
Yes.
Okay. If you walked home and that significant other, and I don't know if you have children or not, or you have a, a nephew or whatever, and they're just executed style and they're laying there on the ground, are you just going to stand over them? Are you going to see, you're going to first see if they're living, right? You're going to try to move them. You're not going to be totally clean when the police come. You're going to have mud on your hands. You may have a little blood, something. This guy was cleaner than if he was going to church on Sunday.
It's just not good for the case, though. Not for his. I mean, that's better for him.
Which kind of cut both ways. But of course, if my boyfriend were lying in a pool of blood when I came home, I'm going to rush over there. But you know what else I'm going to do? And this is horrible to admit. After I rush over there and I get blood all over me, if I determine that, there's no hope, I'm going to now worry that I'm going to be accused of killing him.
I know.
The lawyer,
it scares me I live in a house with my wife. What if I come home and she's dead? Somebody's going to think I did it if I call the police.
We're all watching too much Dateline, I think. Real quick, Eric Bland from Dr. Vonda K. Can someone ask what they usually don't put my stuff up? That's not fair, Dr. Vonda K. I put your stuff up. The demographics of the jurors. Do we happen to know that? I used to know it, Eric. Do we know how many men, how many women, et cetera, et cetera?
It's like 6 and 6, and there's, I think about 5 or 6 African Americans, and the rest are, Caucasian. It's an even mix. It's a good representation of the community. Mm-hmm. Not the jury that Alex wanted. He wanted the country club jurors, but it's a representation of the community.
And Jonna, this is an important point. So Becky Hill, and I spoke to Neil Gordon about this, who's the co-author. She wrote a letter to the State Ethics Commission, basically asking if it would be a violation to publish a book about the quote unquote process of trial from beginning to end, even though that's really not what it ended up being about. So the question here is, Becky wrote to whomever at the court to ask about what parameters were needed if she wrote this book. Should they, the Ethics Commission, have advised her to wait until after the appeal? I saw their reply. How do you think they should have responded?
So whenever you have a question to the Ethics Committee, and we lawyers ask them all the time, they always respond.
They don't give you an answer.
Generic roundabout thing like, oh, go look it up. In the such and such case.
Yeah, they give you a circular answer.
Yeah, it's like you're back in law school again, and they're only getting what you give them. So if Becky Hill said, I want to write a book about the process, but really she wants to write a book about how, how guilty he was, then they can only provide the answer based on the information that they receive. So it's not an out. Like she can't hang her hat on, well, I got permission from the Ethics Committee. No, that's not going to fly.
I didn't like, Joel, how she said what happened in camera. It's one thing to talk about what happened on the witness stand, guys, in the open court. Mm-hmm. But I think, and I haven't read the book, so I may be mistaken, but I heard somebody on a show say she wrote what happened in camera. And I don't think that ever should be written about. Do you guys agree with me on that?
100%. That's sacrosanct. That's absolutely sacrosanct.
There's a reason why it's not on the record.
Yeah.
There's a reason
This
why.
question to Eric from Andy's school. Can Eric Bland speak on Judge Newman's appointment of the forewoman that became an issue for others on the jury, so much so she wasn't the eventual forewoman by the end of the trial? Do we know what happened with that, Eric?
Yeah, in the beginning of the trial, he said, there's going to be a four-person picked to, ultimately guide the jury when it's time to deliberate, or, after, he releases and discharges them to deliberate. They decided on their own they were going to pick a four-person. And so that person kind of guided the jury, during the trial, made comments like, look, let's stop talking about that, or whatever. And then all of a sudden they told Judge Newman, when he said, let's pick a four-person, they said, I already picked one. And he said, no, I'm going to pick one. And I think that angered the jurors. But that's how it happened. They picked their own, and Judge Newman said, no, you can't do it. I got to pick it.
Amy Lawrence, I'm afraid to bring this comment up, but I just did, from Chelsea Whitaker, because it's come up a bunch of times. I have a question for Eric and Amy. This one for Amy. How much do y'all know? Because this gets into a little bit of character assassination, and I want to try to stay away from that unless this is something you guys are hyper aware of.
I do know.
How much do you all know about the Murdoch history of jury fixing? The consensus is that it was happening and everyone knew. Were there ever consequences for that? Eric, since you say go for it.
Mark Tinsley actually testified to it. He saw Alex Murdaugh at the trial lawyers convention, and Alex came up to him and bowed up to him and said, hey, Bo, why are you coming after me? Because they are very close. The firms that exchange cases, if there was multiple people in a wreck, one would get one, they'd send it to the other. And he said, look, why are you coming after me? And he said, look, Mark said, because this is a serious thing. And then he said, well, what county are you going to try it in? And he said, look, I'll leave it in Hampton if you don't fix the jury. And he told that to Alex Murdaugh. And so for Mark Tinsley to say that on the stand and say that he said that to Alex Murdaugh, Mark Tinsley had knowledge that Alex had done that before. That was a very powerful thing that Mark testified to under oath.
What we also do know is that he was getting officers to change accident reports for who was at fault and who wasn't. And that firm had a reputation that you don't bring cases in that county without co-counseling them, because they would get nowhere. And they were known for getting these really, really big verdicts because they represented so many people in that county that there was like an allegiance to it.
Well, they do a lot of things that you can do in a small county. They pay for funerals. They send graduation gifts. They do buy twice a year pig pickings for the first responders. They sponsor Dixie Youth Baseball. I mean, we can't do that in a big city. Johnny, you can't do it in New York, but in a small town of 3,500 people, you can do it. And the other thing is they lived amongst the jurors. They saw them at the grocery store. You see them at the church. They're right there with these people. And so when they get up in front of them, they can be trusted.
I had a judge tell me a story about how he was in that county, because we always have a traveling judge to have like somebody who's, make sure there's no home cooking going on. And that Alex, that firm was trying a case, and Alex's dad came and sat in the jury box and was like watching voir dire and all the stuff. And he said, I had to ask him to leave. And no one had ever had the audacity to ask him to leave. And he's the head prosecutor, right? So he's watching everybody that comes through, and he's staring him down and looking at him. And he said, and I made him leave. And because he was a new judge, he didn't bucket like he probably would have with anybody else. And he kind of went, but he said he made it very clear that no one had ever done that. And he didn't like it.
Gerald says, I like Jonna. What's not to like? Best guess in true crime. And
I like Jonna too.
Yeah, Jonna's she says it as she sees it. Jonna, so here's a kind of a quote from the book Behind the Doors of Justice. Becky Hill's recounting, as she prepared to read the verdict, she writes, she was concerned that the Murdoch family's goodwill in Colleton County would, quote unquote, influence the jury. That's problematic, right? I mean, just that she is saying she's worried about that, about the Murdochs influencing the jury. Again, I don't think this is a matter of whether we like Alex Murdaugh, like Dick Harpootlian, like Jim Griffin or don't, but this is about the process again, John, is it not?
Absolutely. And why would she be worried about the outcome of the verdict? She should have been worried about whether there were enough pencils, worried about whether the pizza was going to arrive on time, worried about whether there was enough toilet paper in the ladies' room. That's what she should have been worried about, not the outcome of a trial that she had nothing to do with. She wasn't a lawyer. She wasn't a witness. She wasn't a juror. So to put that in your book is A, dumb, and B, is another reason why this is happening now and why Alex Murdaugh is going to get a hearing, if not a new trial, because of this.
And John, another thing here, Becky Hill describes a jury that, quote unquote, bonded immediately over work, family, faith, and child custody issues. She writes that they talked about current events during breaks and that they prayed together each morning before walking into the courtroom. It also evinces an intimate familiarity with the jurors, recounting stories about a juror whose friends chipped in to keep him afloat financially during the trial, others who were called to court for traffic violations, and yet another, I won't get into this, got a little more personal about feminine issues, but they're not allowed to talk about the trial, but it sounds like Becky was very much inside the inner circle here. And again,
a lot of that came post-trial, Joel. She traveled to New York with 3 of the jurors. So a lot of that came post-trial. But I agree. It's too much detail. It's too much. TMI.
Jonna,
jury during the trial. I mean, she's having personal conversations with some of these jurors while the trial is going on. Are you kidding me?
No. That was post-trial. But everybody was aware that they were praying.
Well, see, so that again, that's just another example of the things that are so wrong with. She should not be. Could you imagine if the judge was doing that? You know, there's a jury instruction at every criminal trial at every trial, you're not to take cues from the judge. So if a judge is yawning, if a judge is like rolling his eyes, which a judge should never do during the trial, and you're a juror, you have to ignore that. So if you're befriending and the clerk is giving you feminine protection because you're on your period during deliberations, it's just no. It's just so this is getting worse and worse because
it's weird and icky. Right. It's weird and icky. It's got an ick factor that just didn't feel right.
You know, and look, we all like to befriend when you're an attorney, you want to be friendly with the clerk, right? Because they can bump you up if you're running late and you need your case heard first that day, and you're nice to the clerk, but you're not allowed to bring them coffee and donuts. You're not allowed to do any of that, but you don't want them not on your side. You don't want to piss off the clerk because then you're going to be the last case heard in that courtroom every time you have to appear there. But that's different than befriending the people who are making the decision on a defendant's life. Totally.
No, I disagree that you can't bring coffee or a donut to a clerk of court.
Not in my
neck do that.
Yeah. Hey, don't be saying that. Yeah.
You can't do
in
that.
New York, they smack you around.
Women like get me out of like my own stupidity more times than you could ever imagine. And all
Amy Lawrence Lovely, Diana Johnson, she has a super sticker here. How come Alec can shake hands in court? There's a lot of controversy because some congressmen came up to him and they hugged.
South Carolina minority leader. It was a disgrace.
Yeah, that was the optics of that. What was the fallout of that, Eric? Was there any fallout from
that? It's a big fallout. Todd Rutherford is the House minority leader in our state house, and he represents Russell Laffitte, one of the other of the unholy trinity, Corey Fleming being the other and Alex the third. When Alex came in, he was guarded by SWAT, special op officers, not just the Department of Corrections officers. They had a leash on him. They were holding him by a leash. And I guess that's to protect the public or protect him. But somehow they just let him go talk to Todd Rutherford, and Todd Rutherford shook his hand and smiled and exchanged pleasantries with the double murderer. Are you kidding me? You're the minority leader of the House of Representatives, and a guy's walking in who's a double murderer, who's disgraced our profession. Like Jonna said, I mean, and he stole $10 million from clients. He stained our entire profession in our state, and a representative leader of our state is shaking hands with a double murderer.
Any other attorney in South Carolina wouldn't have pissed on him if he was on fire.
Eric Bland, AG, IG. Question for Eric. What happened to the $4 million Alex got from his father's trust? Is that untouchable? You mentioned this on Law and Crime this spring.
Yeah, it is untouchable. And the question I asked this weekend is, why are Harpootlian and Griffin going so deep in so many different trials and so many different appeals? Just so you guys know, they appealed losing the vacating the confession of judgment that Alex gave to my clients for $4.3 million. The lower court ruled against him and held it was a valid judgment he gave me. They've appealed it. Who's paying them? Because I was able to get the court not to give them $160,000 for the appeal. Yes, he has $4 million. Supposedly, his father died 3 days after. His father did die 3 days after the murders, and he left $16 million, $4 million for each of his children.
Eric, this is very important. I should have asked it earlier on. We mentioned it, but I didn't ask you the status of Stephen Smith's case. Do we know? Obviously, SLED investigating that as well. Man, the more we talk about this, the different tentacles, all with Mallory Beach, Stephen Smith, all these issues, Buster Murdoch doing the interview. But any word on Stephen Smith here?
No, and I'm starting to get a little bit disappointed. There was a lot of energy by SLED in the spring. They told me they were going to reallocate all the officers that were on the Murdoch case to Stephen's homicide. They declared it was a homicide. I'm confident that they know of 5 or 6 people that have information, and I know that these people are keeping quiet. They don't know, I guess, who did it, but there is an impaneled grand jury, but it's moving a little bit slower. And, in a couple of weeks, I think I'm going to get a little bit more vocal, but now I have nothing new to report, unfortunately.
And there have been some persons of interest named there. I still have to get to the financial crimes. These are high-powered attorneys I'm dealing with, and they've got big billable hours. So that's what makes me tense. I got to keep it moving here. But real quick, Jonna, to you, this whole thing with Becky Hill, we go back to February 24th. She claimed that some guy named Timothy Stone, who's the egg lady's apparent ex-husband or ex-lover, she was the ex-wife, was out talking, getting drunk. This is what prompted this removal ultimately from Judge Clifton Newman to get rid of the egg lady. But apparently there was this big post on Facebook that ended up not necessarily being true or real. Are these all the sorts of things that this SLED investigation now is going to have to go back and look at to try to get to the bottom, Jonna, of what was actually going on here and what wasn't? Even a Domino's pizza driver was brought into the mix who allegedly said that the egg lady had said some stuff, and Becky Hill claimed that this Domino's pizza driver said some things that apparently were never said. So there's so many layers to this. I mean, how do you unravel it, I guess is my question. You have to rely on SLED to do all that.
Well, and we know that Harpootlian doesn't want to rely on SLED to do all that, but that's a confusing yet really key fact, right? Because that fact alone, if it's proven true, means that Becky Hill intentionally told a lie to tamper with this jury. Now, I don't know how easy or hard it's going to be to prove. I mean, they have like forensic evidence that there was no such post, or the post was put up and taken down before any of this could have happened. Like, it's a little bit confusing right now to me. But that's a key fact, because that is not something that's left up to interpretation. That's a flat out bullshit. If in fact that happened intentionally to change the composition of a jury in the middle of a murder trial, that's what's going to get Becky Hill in a whole lot of trouble. Even if you've got 4 jurors that say, no, I didn't hear that, and 2 jurors that said, yeah, I heard that. This whole thing, the provable thing with the post, is a different ball game, in my opinion.
Amy Lawrence, we got to get to these financial crimes. So Alex Murdaugh still faces more than 100 counts of financial crimes. He's 55 years old. He's alleged to have stolen more than $8 million from clients, including Eric Bland's clients, the Satterfield family. As Eric alluded to, he was in court last week. He was literally leashed and handcuffed, but he came in smiling. To you, how did he look from a lifestyle in state prison standpoint when you saw him, Amy Lawrence?
I thought he looked good. Didn't you think he looked good, Eric? Unfortunately,
Yeah, he had they gave him obviously a brand new jumpsuit so that the
Chris
SCDC could look good. It was crisp, it was orange, bright.
haircut.
He did have a little bit of the crazy eyes, Joel and Amy.
Mm.
I was right behind him, and I wouldn't say it's institutionalized yet, but he had crazy eyes of, okay, I'm alone in a cell, and I'm finally out. I'm like having a field trip. He definitely had that, anxious, agitated look on his face, and he was looking around the room. And
Did you
he
make eye
recognized.
contact, Eric? Did he acknowledge you in any way?
No, I didn't make any eye contact with him. No, he's a
Okay.
scumbag. I'm not going to give him time of day.
Well put. That's one way to say it for sure. So Judge Newman said he's going to stand trial, Eric Bland, on November 27th for charges that he stole millions from the family of his former housekeeper, Gloria
Much to the
Satterfield.
chagrin of Harpootlian.
Yeah. So fill in the lines here.
There was a chessboard. Harpootlian had a chessboard that he was working, and that chessboard is that he is hopeful to get the murder trial reversed and get a new trial. He's pleading Alex guilty on September 21st in federal court. So his goal is to get Alex pled guilty, get the pre-sentence report done over the next 4 or 5 months, and then he gets sentenced by Judge Gergel in federal court and let him load him up. Then the murder trial gets reversed when they go through this jury situation. He gets a new trial. He's not convicted. He goes over to federal court. Judge Newman thwarted that because he said, no, we're not going to try this case next fall, in the fall of 2024. We're going to try it this fall, the day after Thanksgiving. And Harpootlian went crazy and said, I'm going over to Slovenia. My wife's an ambassador. I'm spending Thanksgiving there. Judge Newman said, well, you're going to have to prepare while you're over there and fly back on Thanksgiving Day. And that is a problem because if you get convicted in state court, you get sentenced immediately, which will put them right back in state court. And they're not consolidating all the financial crime trials, Joel. They're doing them one by one. Why? 3 felony convictions gives you life without parole. LWOP them. And so they got the state has so many backstops. He'll never get a fresh breath of air. It's just a question: is he going to do it in federal prison or state prison? But guys, we're safe. That man is never coming back in our lives.
Yeah, and that's been the argument, that they're making a play for federal prison because it's a lot easier to do time apparently in federal prison than state prison. Jonna, to you, Dick Harpootlian's exact quote: "What is the hurry?" He said to Judge Newman. He's pleading in federal court next Thursday to every allegation the state has made. And then Dick Harpootlian made the argument that it's nearly impossible to find an impartial jury. And he asked Judge Newman, where are you going to get a jury? On Mars? Is he just doing what a defense attorney needs to do, Jonna?
No, he's making a good point. And I think my colleagues will agree with me. Look, we all have hundreds of clients, right, between us. So if we say to a judge, we're not available on such and such a day for such and such a month to do a gigantic trial over again, for that judge to say, screw you, fly back from Slovakia on Thanksgiving is like stabbing you in the heart. And to me, it's unprofessional. We all have clients. We all have schedules. We know he's not going to see.
You didn't hear Harpootlian make fun of Judge Newman before he made that decision.
Well, then there you go.
Harpootlian said to Judge Newman, you're making a joke. Judge Newman said, no, I'm not joking. Then he said to him, you're not going to be hearing these cases because you're going to retire. And Judge Newman said, how do you know I'm not going to take senior status and hear these cases? Then he got angry at Judge Newman. Harpootlian was the one who did a press conference, Jonna. He's the one that went out before the microphones. So he's out there poisoning the jury pool. That's what he was trying to do with a press conference on the State House grounds in front of the Court of Appeals. That was his way of poisoning the jury pool. So everybody here has skin in the game. Harpootlian was saying podcasters are out there. They're talking about it all the time. His partner, Jim Griffin, has a podcast, started it 4 weeks ago. So Harpootlian also made a mistake when he said the state wanted to try this case so fast. We didn't want to try it. Creighton Wooders stood up and said, Judge, he's the one who made a motion for a speedy trial. You know what Harpootlian said? Well, they accepted it. I mean, come on. It's ridiculous. Harpootlian made Judge Newman mad and got the result that he shouldn't have gotten.
I don't think he was trying to taint a jury, though. I think he was trying to make Judge Newman
Bristle.
put it all out there to hold him accountable to get the new trial. Like, it's so outrageous, but it all fell flat. That's the problem, because he didn't say it with any conviction. I mean, if he said it with conviction, this is what the juror said happened with conviction, instead of, I believe they might testify to this, then it would have been the only option for Judge Newman to give that trial, because I truly believe that this is like Judge Newman's kind of swan song. This is his last big thing that he's doing, and it was done beautifully. And it's going to take an insurmountable amount of evidence for him to overturn it, even whether it's conscious or unconscious. And I think that was him trying to push Judge Newman to do what he wants.
Well, he wants him conflicted off the case. He said you're a witness.
He was trying to make him a witness too in that case. Yeah.
And two, he said you need to be conflicted off based on the comments you made during the sentencing. Remember, he said that, Amy, and that's not a basis to get him off.
I was texting with Amy Z and Taylor Bell. We're all like, all the lawyers in our group are like, is he trying to disqualify Judge Newman? Yeah, and I'm like,
really
ooh, that's a
Amy Lawrence, this is kind of a low blow from listener. Does Poot have the time and energy for a second Murdoch trial? The guy's pretty spry still. He's no spring chicken. And he's coming to Crime Con, where I'll be this weekend. And people are poking fun that his picture is like 20 years old. But he's got energy. He can handle a second trial, don't you think, Amy?
Yeah, I just don't think he wants a second trial. But I do think that this really has nothing to do with. I don't think he's getting paid. Although I don't think he does anything where he doesn't get paid. I think this is more about ego than anything. For her point.
I think you're going to see a new trial team.
You say,
I think somebody's going to be added to this trial. I think somebody's going to be added.
Nothing will get done in the judicial system for another 6 weeks in South Carolina. The gears of justice will halt.
I think there's going to be a new addition to the trial team.
There you go. You just heard Eric Bland live on SCS saying if Alex Murdaugh gets a retrial, it's going to be a new legal team. Kelly P.
No, not a total new team, but a substantial addition.
Question for Eric. Can Judge Newman stay longer than the said retirement? Can he see this through, Eric Bland? He can. Okay.
Yes. Our former Chief Justice still sits and hears all of asbestos cases. So it's the current Chief Justice designates what the senior judges can do.
So another guy, and then we're going to start to wrap up, get final thoughts. Corey Fleming, he's a disbarred attorney, another one in the state of California, and a friend of Alex Murdaugh. He also appeared before Judge Newman this past Thursday, pleaded guilty. Gloria Satterfield, the family is Eric Bland's client. Her sister, a woman named Ginger Hadwin, she spoke up in court. She said she forgives Corey Fleming, but it doesn't take away from the hurt he caused the family. And she said, and this is a direct quote, "We feel like that Gloria did not die in vain because her case actually brought out a lot of other corruption and dishonest deeds that were done to other people." How is the family doing, Eric?
They're doing okay. They're now getting a little bit frustrated because obviously I just told you they appealed that afternoon at 4:00, a decision that we had won in front of another judge in attempting to vacate the confession of judgment. I also spoke for about 15 minutes. And what I spoke to Judge Newman about is the stain that Corey Fleming did on our profession, that, the lawyer jokes are going to multiply by tenfold. He did more harm to our state and our profession, that lawyers are stealing money. And I told Judge Newman, you need to sentence the crime, not so much to sentence the criminal, because unfortunately, nice guys do commit crimes, and Corey seems to be a nice enough man. But the crime he committed was very serious. And Judge Newman took that seriously and said that he had just sentenced the teacher of the year 2 weeks before in the trial, who left her disabled child in a car for 8 hours during 100-degree weather. And when the car was opened up, the child died, and it was 139 degrees, and he gave the woman 37 years. So when we all heard that, everybody knew that Judge Newman was going to load up Corey Fleming, and he did.
The statement from Attorney General Alan Wilson about Corey Fleming, Jonna, this is for you, and then we'll start to wrap up. He wrote, in South Carolina, no one is above the law. We're pleased with Corey Fleming's sentencing and hope his victims feel a little relief today. Our office has worked tirelessly on this case, just like the rest of the Murdoch-related cases, and we are committed to seeing each and every one through to the end. He is the figurehead, obviously, for the legal system in the state of South Carolina. Is that the major message here, that no one is above the law? We see the fall of these attorneys in the state kind of tumbling over like dominoes, including Richard Lafitte, who is not an attorney as far as I know, but ran a financial institution. But what about that no one is above the law?
Well, I always agree with that statement. And it seems like, I mean, my colleagues are much more familiar with the South Carolina bar. But, look, this unraveled really fast. This unraveled, I mean, this whole, what do you call it, dynasty, the Murdoch dynasty, they were not good guys at all. I don't know. I don't care how much money they gave to the Little League or the Piggly Wiggly or whatever. They were not good. I mean, if you believe all these financial crimes and the way they hurt their clients and the lies and, just they were never good. So I think this is not a fall from grace, because I don't think there was ever grace. This is just a friggin' fall, and good. And everybody connected with it. See ya. Don't drop the soap.
What we saw play out in court, Joel, was the tension between the state and federal court in our state. Judge Gergel announced a sentence for Corey Fleming of 46 months last month, and he said, "It's my hope that Judge Newman will listen to me, that this is enough time, and that whatever time he gives will be concurrent." When it came time for Corey's attorney, Debbie Barbier, to say that Judge Newman, we asked that you listen to Judge Gergel. Judge Newman stopped him and said, "I'm a sovereign judge in a sovereign state, and these are state court charges in front of me. I didn't even read Judge Gergel's transcript. I don't care what Judge Gergel gave him. I'm going to give him the time as if Corey Fleming is before me for the first time." And so we have a real big tension going on in these cases between the state and federal courts, which you never see play out in public, but it is.
Amy Lawrence, never one afraid to drop an F-bomb. She works for the civil rights of the wrongfully accused. She is passionate, and she's been on the Dr. Phil show. Amy Lawrence, is this going to go to a retrial? What are you expecting next? Oh, you're muted.
Amy, you're muted.
Sounded great, though.
Sorry, I was yelling at my kids, like, take a shower, like, get in the bed. My husband's in there. He's, being the dad, the fun one. I think there's a piece of us that wants to put it to bed, right, for everybody, so we can kind of move forward. But on the other hand, like, it's the train wreck we can't take our eyes off of, and we have this like little thing in us that wants to see another, for it to continue on just a little bit, because it's so interesting, and we're hoping that more evidence will be brought out, or we'll get to see something differently. My hope is that the system works, and if those jurors get up and testify that what is in these affidavits is true, that the Constitution wins, the system and the integrity of it wins, because that's the big overlying problem in this case to begin with, is that everybody did something to circumvent it and no one was ever held accountable. So, and I hope it's all done in the sunshine and in the spotlight, because we all need to see exactly, the only way to stamp out darkness is to shed light on it. And we need to see it. It needs to be public. I think we can keep the jurors' anonymity there, not show their face, that kind of stuff, and not show their name. But we need to hear all the evidence. That way we can all feel better about the integrity of the system.
Jonna Spilber, first time on SCS. Hopefully it is the first of many. She's a popular and outspoken attorney. Love what she brings to the table. She's been on Fox News Channel, my own home, old home, the Fox Business Network, other television networks. She's a resident legal expert. Thursday morning on the #1 morning radio show in New York, Hudson's Valley, WPDH 101.5. She also co-hosts the award-winning radio show Happy Hour with Jonna and Carol, which airs weekly on K104.7 FM, I'm gonna have to see if I can get that on TuneIn, which is what I listen to a lot of radio on, because I'm a weird guy that listens to radio. Jonna, is there going to be a retrial here? Dom's mom says, "Come back, Jonna." Well, on the record, will you come back, Jonna?
Absolutely, yes.
All right, love it.
Don't even have to kiss my arm.
Will there be a retrial?
100% there's going to be a hearing. I'm 85% there's going to be a retrial, but it doesn't matter. Any retrial will not be a victory for Alex Murdaugh. Any retrial will be a victory for the process, will be a victory for jurisprudence, will be a victory for the Constitution, because we want everybody to have a fair shot, guilty or not. And if he didn't get one, he deserves one. Not going to change anything. He's still going to be sitting in a cell for the rest of his natural life. But we need to preserve and protect the system for everybody else, not just Alex Murdaugh.
Eric Bland, what can I say? You know the name, you know the face. He has been one of the centerpieces of this Alex Murdaugh saga, whether he likes it or not. He's now representing 4 Murdoch jurors. He's also representing the Satterfield family, as well as members of the Stephen Smith family in all of this. Eric, how are you holding up through all this? For all the love you get plenty of hate too. Does it start to weigh on you after a while? I always see you with that smile on your face. You're a mensch. You do media. You come on my show. I don't know why, but you do it. But is it start to weigh?
You're Emmis.
Does it start to weigh on you after a while? Good.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Haters will hate, and when you say things. And look, the fact of the matter is, when people see me frequently, they're starting to, the positive energy that they gave me now turns to negative. It's okay. It's okay. I got a job to do, and I can handle it. I got thick skin. I've been doing this for going on 36 years. It's it's part of the territory.
And what do you say? Retrial or no retrial?
I think John is right. I think there'll be a hearing, and I think it's less than 50% chance there'll be a retrial.
Less than 50%. You heard it here tonight from these best guests. Quick programming note. Got an interesting show tomorrow night. We've got some former inmates coming on to talk what life is like for Alex Murdaugh and Danilo Cavalcante, that PA fugitive who was just caught. Danny Masterson, the now convicted rapist. Charlie Adelson is about to go to trial in the Dan Markel case and could face life in prison. So we're talking to some former inmates who did hard time about what it's like behind those prison bars. That is not a place I ever want to go. Wednesday night, we are doing Dan Markel, 7 p.m. Eastern time. The latest on that case is going to be a new judge. Charlie Adelson's trial in that case starts about a month from now. But at 2 hours before 5 p.m. Eastern time, guess who I'm bringing on? I'm bringing on 3 canines, 3 dogs that I'm going to talk to about the kind of work they do day in and day out. Can't wait to speak to them and their handlers. Until then, love you, America. Love you, South Carolina. Love you, Poughkeepsie. Love you, Manhattan, New York. Where else? The Republic of Ireland, and everywhere. I love everyone. Till next time. Guest, hang on for 1 second.